We're recording. And I'm gonna, oops, there's Larissa. So I'm gonna share my screen and okay. Okay, so do you guys see the slides or do you see my presenter view?
I think I see presenter view.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, which means I need to do what I need to do. Video settings. Oops, not stop video. How do I switch it? Now I'm being spacey.
Check under display settings. It might allow you to swap. There's a swap thing somewhere.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Why do I not see it?
Up at the top it says like end slideshow, show taskbar display settings. Maybe check that.
Oh, I'm not seeing that because I'm seeing my Zoom. Let's see. That's weird. Okay, so I'm going to stay still and hope this little toolbar at the top goes away so I can see the other options.
You should be able to grab it and move it, or the little dots you can say hide toolbar.
Hide floating meeting controls. There they are.
Yeah.
Okay. Floating meeting controls. Okay, swap. There we go. Is that better?
Perfect.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you for coming, everyone. Just wanted to have this session to educate everyone about the HBR qualifying exam. And I'm glad to see students as well as faculty here because we do have some new faculty who might not be aware of the process and faculty who just want to learn the process. And this will also be helpful for students who are planning to go through the quals at some point soon. So I'll just go over kind of what the qualifying exam is. Basically, the qualifying exam signifies that you have advanced from coursework to dissertation. So you spend about the first 3 years of your program, give or take, doing coursework, and then you sort of switch into a research and dissertation stage. And the quals is like the boundary between those two. So the goal of the qualifying exam is to come up with a plan for your dissertation that your whole committee agrees on. Okay, so what you should come out of it with a clear plan for this is what you're going to do with your dissertation, and it's okay with your committee. There are 2 parts of the exam, written and oral. Okay, so when can you qual? You have to wait until you've taken all of your required courses and your research units. So that's all the required courses, all of the other elective courses you need to get the minimum number of credits, and also all of your directed researches. So that's why I usually recommend getting those out of the way as soon as possible. You know, especially the directed researches, because you kind of take the classes when they come up, but the directed researches you can take at any time. So if you take them early on, you'll be done faster and you'll be ready to qual. Okay. And so a lot of people get in this situation where they're like at the end of their 3rd year or the beginning of their 4th year, and they want to do their quals, but they're still finishing up some credits. That's okay. You can sort of start the process, but then you can't officially pass your quals until all the grades from that semester are recorded. But you can go ahead and do all the prep stuff during that last semester. Usually students qual like toward the end of the 3rd year to the middle of the 4th year. And this really varies a lot. I don't think we've had anyone do it before the 3rd year because you have so many classes to get out of the way. But so some people have been really organized and got it done at the end of the 3rd year. Other people kind of take a little while to figure out what they want to do, and that's totally fine. Then they do it in the 4th year, but it's good to have it done by your 4th year so you can go ahead and do your dissertation in your 5th year. You can do it later. You have 8 years to do the whole degree. So, technically you could do your quals in year 7, but when you get around year 3 and year 4, we're going to start nagging you to get it done, because we really want people to progress and graduate and not take 8 years to get a PhD. It's supposed to be a 5-year program. Okay, so this is the process. First of all, you form your committee, and we'll talk about who can be on your committee. But basically, you're recruiting a committee of 5 faculty members to be your official quals committee. Then you prepare your dossier, and we'll talk about what goes into the dossier. It's basically your dissertation proposal and some other paperwork. Then you give the dossier to the committee, and nowadays we just do it as a PDF. It used to be like a big binder, but now most people just do a PDF. The committee reads your dossier and they write questions for your written exam. Okay, so the written exam is a 1-week exam where you're spending 5 days answering the questions from your committee members. Then the committee reads your written exam, and then you present your dissertation proposal in the oral defense. So that's like a really high level overview. And now we'll get into some of the details. Okay, so your quals committee. This changes occasionally. So you should, I think since I've been in this position, it's probably changed like 5 times. So you should probably check with Renee or check with me to make sure you're following the right rules. Because they could change without warning. But what it is right now is you have your committee chair. That person has to have their primary appointment in population and public health sciences. Hopefully that won't be too hard for you, because we have like over 100 faculty members. Hopefully one of them is a good match for you. And ideally, your primary mentor would be in HBR, just because then they'll know more about our program, but it doesn't have to be. Okay. Oh, did someone said in the chat, oh, presenter view, sorry. Okay. So then you also need an outside member. Now this has been a little confusing, because first we had an outside member, then USC got rid of the outside member, and then the department decided to put back the outside member. So as of now, you do need an outside member, and they can be either an outside member or an external member. An outside member is someone whose primary appointment is in another department at USC. So they could be in psychology, in social work, Annenberg, biology, some clinical department, something like that. And it's okay if they have a joint appointment or a secondary appointment in our department, but their primary affiliation has to be outside our department. You could also have, as your outside member, you can have an external member, which is someone outside of USC. Okay, so that could be, a previous mentor from another university, or someone who your mentor here collaborates with, something like that. So you have to have one of those people, either outside or external. If they have not been on a USC committee before, they need to submit their CV. This is a pretty basic process, they just send their CV. Susan has a list of CVs that are already approved, but if they're not on that list, then they can just send their CV and we'll get it approved by the grad school. And they'll be approved as long as they're doing some research. Even if research isn't their primary activity, as long as they've been doing some publishing in the past few years, they're probably fine. They can also be emeritus if they're kind of recently emeritus, like if they just retired a year or 2 ago and their research is kind of recent, then that's fine. The other 3 members should all be from population and public health sciences. Okay, so you have the chair, you have the outside or external member, and you have 3 other members from our department. Now, some people have 6 people who they work with, and they want to have 6 people on their committee. That's totally fine, but the 6th member is unofficial. There's not a place on the form to put their name, but they can certainly help. They can be co-authors on your papers, they can advise you, they can come to your calls, that's totally fine. It's just that they're not officially on the form. And actually, I kind of encourage people not to have so many members, because the more members you have, the harder it is to get them all together to come to a meeting. So it's usually easier to get 5 people together than 6. But if you really want 6, go ahead. Just know that one of them is unofficial. If any of the members are not tenure track, they have to be on the list of faculty who are allowed to be committee members. And the good thing about this is that just about all of our faculty are already in this list. So as long as they're not brand new, they'll be on the list. So they're already approved. If they're not on the list, all they need to do is send their CV to Susan, and then they can get on the list. So that shouldn't be a problem for you at all. Okay. Oops. Okay, why is this not advancing? Oops. Sorry. Okay, there we go. Okay, so as soon as you know who's on your committee, there's a form that you can download. And this is to tell the grad school who's on your committee. And it's probably easier to let Renee do this for you in DocuSign. She's been doing it lately. You just tell her the names of the committee members. She can get it signed by, she can send it through DocuSign, get it signed by everyone, and then she can route it to Ita Ofringa. Ita is the person who approves the form. So it's probably, in the old days, people used to fill out the form themselves and then, walk around and get it signed or send it to people one at a time to paste their signatures onto a PDF, but it's a real pain. So it's much easier to just get Renee to do that for you. And she's happy to do it. So, and at the same time, she can check to make sure that all the committee members are approved. Renee will prepare the form. She'll send it to Ita. Ita doesn't like getting a lot of emails from students, so just let Renee do it. And then you'll find out that it's approved. If you need to change your committee before your qual, you just submit an updated version of that form. Okay, so I'll show you what the form looks like.
Jennifer, and sorry, do you mind if I just chime in really quick?
Yeah, please.
So I actually have, and this is going to be added to the handbook in fall, but we do have some power form links through DocuSign where
Cool.
just reach out to me if you need it. And then what the student will do is click on it and it will ask for all of the committee member information. And so that's where you will officially fill out the graduate school form, which looks like this.
Oh, great.
The fields will be there, so you could just type in all the information that you need.
Oh, great.
So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, do you have a link to that, or is that still?
Yes, I do. Actually, I'll get it and I'll put it in the chat for everyone.
Cool, thank you. That's great.
Sure.
Okay, cool. Okay, so you don't have to be typing into these little boxes and asking people to paste their signatures onto a PDF and send it to the next person and all that, because that's a big pain. Okay, so this is what.
And I also can see the process of where it's at. So if anybody ever has questions of where it's at or whose signature is pending, you could always just email me and I can let you know where it is in the process. So
that's great.
I still can kind of have like an overview of where everything's at.
Cool. Thank you, Renee. That's great. That's going to be very helpful. Okay. Let's see. So, okay. So then this is the second page of the form, and this is just to show you that you need to put your name and sign it. And where it says department chair or program director, I can sign that as the program director. So you don't need to get Howard or something. That's confusing for some people. And Ita signs for the dean, so Renee will take care of all that, so don't worry about it. But some people like put the wrong people in these slots, and this is just to show you which people are supposed to be here. Okay, so to do this, you want to make a schedule. This is where it gets a little confusing for some people, so I'll go through it. The whole process takes about a month from the time that you have your dossier ready and you send it out all the way to the time when you defend your proposal and pass your oral exam. So this is just the sample schedule. This is assuming that you finished your dossier and sent it out on March 1st. Okay, so suppose you put your dossier together in like February, you send it to your committee March 1st. Then you should give the committee 2 weeks to read it and write questions. 2 weeks is a good amount of time because they're reading a lot and they're busy. They're gonna write their questions, and I'll tell you more about the questions later, but they're going to write their questions and send those to your chair. And then you want to give your chair about a week to collect all the questions and, tweak them a little bit if they need to, and then send you the exam. Sometimes people are late sending their questions, and the chair has to nag them a little bit. So it's good to give like a week for that process. Then once your committee chair has put together all the questions, they send you the questions, and you have 5 days to write the exam. So this brings you up to March 27th. So suppose, you got the exam on March 22nd, you'll be done by March 27th. Then you send the answers back, and you should give the committee about a week to read your answers. Okay, so then you can do your orals anytime after that. So a good thing to do, I think something that works really well because people have such busy schedules, is start backwards, like start at the end, find an oral defense date that works for your committee members, and then count backwards to get all the other dates. Okay, so this is an example of what it might look like. So suppose you do a big doodle with your committee members, and you find out that April 5th would be a good day for your orals. So then you can count back from there. You can put in a week for the committee to be reading your answers, and then the week before that is when you're writing your answers. 2 weeks before that is when you're waiting for the committee to read your dossier and give your questions. So if you leave 2 weeks there, that means that you should be giving out your dossier on March 1st. Okay, so this is just one example, and it doesn't have to be like Monday through Friday or anything. You can do your orals over a weekend or something if you want, but this is just an idea. So if you figure out when you want to do your orals, and you basically count back from there. Okay, so what goes in the dossier? The first thing in the dossier should be a letter from the committee chair to the committee explaining the process. And we do have some sample letters. Most people just kind of write their own for their chair, and then the chair can tweak it and sign it. It basically just says what the process is. So it'll say, thank you for being on the committee for so-and-so. Here's what's going to happen. You need to send me 2 questions by this date. I'm going to send the questions to the student. The student's going to have 5 days to answer them. We're going to look at the answers, and then we all get together for the orals. Okay, so if you want a sample letter, we have sample letters around, or you can just write your own. You should put your CV in there, and hopefully, if you're already doing your annual reviews like you're supposed to, you'll have your updated CV. We usually send around the KSOM CV format, and some of the things in there will apply to you. If things don't apply to you, invited symposia, or something that you haven't done yet, then just take that heading off. It's no big deal, but just try to follow the format as much as you can, and put in the relevant information about things that you've done already. Then you have your OASIS report of your courses and grades. Then you should include an empirical paper that you took the lead on. So it doesn't have to be completely your own work, but something that you feel like you've done the majority of the work on. If it's published, that's great. If it's not published, that's okay. Just something that shows that you can do empirical research. Then you have your dissertation proposal. That can look like a grant proposal. So it can be a version of what you do in the grant writing class, if you want to do that. Or if you take the grant writing class and then you change your mind about what you want to do, you can write a new one. It can basically just be in the format of a grant proposal. And some people make it a little longer, the research plan for an F31 is pretty short. It's only 6 pages. So obviously you're going to need to expand on that, put a little more intro, put a little more details about the methods, just kind of beef it up so you can include the information that you didn't have room for. And you don't need the training plan part. So it'll look kind of more like an R01, which is, you can see examples of R01s in various places, but the format's not that important. It's just that you have the basic information. You want to have like an overall intro about what is the problem in the field, what are the unanswered questions, and then approximately 3 studies that you plan to do. and the methods for those. So it's basically like doing like the intro and method section. But the method section is kind of long because it's divided into the 3 papers and it's as detailed as possible. Okay. And then you can also put in any other published or unpublished papers that you want your committee to see. Like if you have 2 or 3 papers that you're really proud of, that's totally fine. You know, just put them all in the dossier. Don't put like so much in that it's too much to read, but you can put in things that you're proud of. Okay, so this is an issue that usually stresses people out. What kind of questions are you going to get on the written exam? These are just some examples that I came up with. This is what I see very often. They usually talk about the theoretical framework or methods or interpretation of your proposed dissertation studies. So if you propose a certain statistical technique, someone might ask, why are you using this technique instead of a different one? And you should be able to answer that. You know, you should be able to say, you know, I chose this technique because my data is like this, and this allows me to estimate this, you know, whereas the other one wouldn't be as good for whatever reason. They also might ask about theory. So, you know, maybe you have a conceptual model and hypotheses that are based on one theory, and they might say, well, what about this other theory? You know, doesn't this other theory contradict, or does it not contradict? And you should be able to talk about that. They might ask about potential mediators and moderators. If you've hypothesized mediators and moderators, they might ask you to justify them. They'll probably want to make sure that you're testing them correctly. That's something that kind of trips up a lot of students. They want to look at mediation or moderation, but they don't quite explain it that well. So you're going to need, so if you don't explain it well in your proposal, then they're going to ask about that in your written exam, and then you're going to have to explain it better. They might ask if there are other mediators and moderators in the data set that you might want to consider. They might ask about alternative explanations that could explain your expected results. So for example, you know, if your hypothesis is supported, you know, what is it possible that it's confounded by this, or is it possible that, you know, you have an unknown moderator or something? So then you could talk about that. If a lot of questions ask about implications. So if you're acting very researchy, but not kind of bringing it back to the real world, they might ask, what are the implications for, you know, practice or further research, that kind of thing. So usually, you know, whatever you're strong on, like different students are strong in different areas. So like if a student is really strong statistically, they might ask you more about the implications or something, or the theory. If you're more of an implications person, they might ask more about the stats. They're trying to get you to think about all the different aspects of your dissertation and be totally ready. Okay. They can ask about your previous papers. They can ask about concepts that aren't directly in your dissertation, but they're sort of tangentially related. Usually you get 10 questions. So if you have a committee of 5 people, each committee member will send 2 questions. So you get 10 questions. Sometimes people, instead of writing 2 questions, they'll write like one long question with multiple parts. Sometimes 2 committee members submit very similar questions, so the chair might combine them. So it might not be exactly 10 questions, but it's usually around 10 questions. So, and you have 5 days to do them. So think about answering about 2 questions per day. Okay, so as the committee chair, this is for faculty who are being a chair for the first time. You need to explain the process and the schedule to the other committee members. So if they've been here for a while, they're probably pretty familiar with the process, but you know, the outside member might not be. And if there are any new faculty or faculty outside the division, you might have to explain it to them. One thing that the chair really needs to do is make sure the questions come in. That the committee members are going to get the dossier, and then 2 weeks later, they're supposed to submit questions. And usually you have to nag them a few times to send you the questions, but make sure you get the questions. When you receive the questions, you should read them over, make sure they make sense. You know, sometimes people ask weird or confusing questions, and you have to reword them a little bit. Sometimes 2 people submit very similar questions, so you might want to either reword one of them or combine them. And just something that it's the chair's responsibility to kind of put together a good, doable, cohesive exam. And if you want to run it by me, that's totally fine if you haven't done it before. Then you send the questions to the student. Then you leave the student alone for 5 days and don't bug them, don't ask them to do work. And then they'll send you their answers 5 days later. Then you send the answers back. And one thing that's a good thing to do is just check in informally with the committee after they've had a chance to read the answers and just say, hey, what do you think of these answers? You know, do you think the person is okay to move on? Just so you kind of know what to expect. And you're not looking for perfection. You know, there's most of the time, the committee's going to have some additional questions that they want to ask to clarify the answers. So that's fine. You know, just, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be decent. And if it's not decent, you know, if several committee members are feeling like the answers were not good enough, you know, you might want to intervene and kind of cancel the process or do it over, you know, whatever you need to do, because you don't want to set the student up for failure. Okay, so during the written exam, you have 5 days to write these essay type answers. So if you have 10 questions, you know, do 2 per day. Some students do have accommodations from the disability office that give them more time on exams. So for example, if you have like ADHD or something, you might have an accommodation that gives you time and a half for exams. If you have that, you can get the same proportion of extra time for your written. So instead of 5 days, it would be 7.5 days. And that's fine, but you can only ask for that if you have an official accommodation. If you think you're gonna need that, you should talk to the disability office way ahead of time and get those accommodations. Because if you don't officially have the accommodation, then you can't have extra time. During your writtens, you should do it all on your own. You can't get help from any other person. You shouldn't be using ChatGPT or AI or anything. You can consult any other resources online, you know, published articles, websites, you know, whatever you want to look at. And so that's totally fine. It's an open book exam, but don't get help from other people. Each answer is usually a few pages long, but really don't get caught up on the length. It varies by what the questions are and how you write. I mean, some people write 10 pages for a question, some people write 2 pages for a question. It's fine as long as you answer the question. Format doesn't matter, font doesn't matter, spacing doesn't matter, margins don't matter, the style of the references doesn't matter, length doesn't matter. Don't worry about all these like procedural things. Just, you know, focus on getting to the crux of the answer and giving good, complete, well-reasoned answers. Okay. So then after the exam, you send your answers to the chair. The chair distributes the answers to your committee. The committee members read your answers and hopefully they'll tell the chair if they think your answers are okay. Or, you know, something that happens very often is like the committee members say, well, the answers were pretty much okay, but I wanted to ask some more questions about this because I don't think the student answered this totally completely. And that's totally fine. So when they call you into the room for the orals, if there's something that they want you to expand upon from the writtens, they'll just ask you to expand. It is possible to fail the written exam. We don't like to fail people. Usually, well, if it's like a really horrible, blatant failure, we might like say, let's just start over in a few months. Like, let's pretend this was a practice and do it for real in a few months. But that happens very rarely. I think I've only seen like 1 or 2 cases where that's happened. Usually what happens is the answers are pretty good, but there might be a few things that they want you to expand upon, and that's totally fine. Okay, so for the oral exam, you can do it either in person or by Zoom or hybrid. Everybody comes into the room, which could be a Zoom room or a real room. And this is kind of weird and stressful, but as soon as you come in, the committee will send you outside or like put you in a breakout room to talk about whether you passed the written exam and are ready to proceed to the oral. So please don't feel weird about that. You know, you're going to come in and they're going to say, okay, leave. So then you leave and you sit there stressing out while they're talking about you. Ideally, they won't talk about you for too long. because you don't want to waste all the time with them, with you out of the room and then them talking. So that's also the chair's responsibility to sort of keep the conversation on track. And if it's going on too long, suggest that you wrap up and bring the student back in so they're not left waiting outside too long. So the committee decides whether you pass the written and whether you can proceed to the oral. And hopefully they say yes. Then they invite you back in. They might ask you some questions from the writtens, and then they ask you to present your dissertation proposal. When you present your dissertation proposal, it's usually about 30 minutes. If you plan on a 30-minute presentation, that's good because they'll probably stop you a few times to ask questions, and it'll end up being like 45 minutes to an hour. And that should be basically the public health issue, the background, and the detailed information about the methods that you're going to use. Okay, so after you've done all that, the committee sends you out again, and they vote on whether you've passed. And if they decide that you passed, then you're done with your quals. You're now a PhD candidate, and you can call yourself PhD-C. If you fail, you can retake the quals once. If it's unlikely that people fail. I mean, ideally the process works in a way that, like, if you're not ready, someone will stop you. And that's another kind of responsibility of the chair. If a student wants to do their quals and you think they're not ready, tell them they're not ready. Tell them to prepare a little bit more or fix the proposal and do it in a few months. But assuming that you passed, you become a PhD candidate, and now you're officially working on your dissertation. At that point, you can reduce your committee to 3 members. You need to keep the chair and the outside member. You don't have to reduce it to 3 members, but you can. Sometimes that's easier because it's hard to get 5 people all together in the room for your defense. Sometimes someone goes on sabbatical, someone leaves, someone's too busy. It's sometimes like, during this 2-year process, the people might not all stay the same, but so you can go down to 3. Then tell Renee that you passed your quals, and she'll submit the form for you. It's called the Report on Qualifying Exam. That'll go through, I think it goes through the petition system, and then you should get a notification that it was approved. Okay, so for your dissertation, basically the oral exam should have led to a very comprehensive plan for your dissertation. So the oral exam is a chance to talk about anything that should be changed in your dissertation plan, and you can all agree on it. Sometimes if there's a lot that needs to be changed, the committee might ask you to write up the changes just to make sure that you understand them all and you're not going to forget. So by the time you start the dissertation, everyone should be really clear on what you're going to do. Okay. And of course, sometimes, you start doing analyses or you start collecting data and you realize that something's not going to work. That's okay. It's research never really works as planned. So, you might want to tweak your hypotheses a little. You might want to, change some of your models, whatever you're going to do, it's okay, but you should talk to the committee. You could just email the committee and say, hey, I was going to use this variable as a predictor, but I looked at it and the distribution isn't good, so I want to switch to this variable or something. And that's usually totally fine. But just make sure to keep your committee in the loop so they're not surprised when they get a dissertation if it's really different from what they expected. And then after you've written the dissertation and defended it, there's all this great information about how to format it and submit it on the grad school site. Okay, so these are some resources. The graduate school has all these forms and guidelines. They have all kinds of information about how to format and submit your dissertation. When you finally get to that point, like after you've defended your dissertation and you're ready and everyone's signed off and you're ready to submit it, then you have to make an account at the thesis center and start uploading stuff. And it's pretty self-explanatory, but Renee can help you with that if you have problems. But there are good resources. Just, Google USC thesis dissertation submission or something, and you'll find it. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. So that is an overview of the process. And now we have time for questions. I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions. So what questions do people have?
Will we be able to get a copy of the PowerPoint?
Yes. In fact, I'll put it in the chat right now.
This
Oh
is,
yeah, someone asked it.
this is really helpful.
Good, okay.
When people reduce the size of the committees between the
Mhm.
proposal to the defense, how does that happen? Is it that there are faculty that get too busy, or is it that there's students that just want to reduce their committee size? Does that work out as a smooth process?
Usually, hopefully it will. Yeah, so usually here, I'm putting this in the chat. Usually a committee gets reduced because maybe someone went on sabbatical or someone left USC or someone's just really busy. Ideally, it should be agreed on by everyone. It shouldn't be like the student just kicking people off because they were too hard or something. That's kind of a way to burn bridges. So I wouldn't do that. But it could happen for a lot of reasons. You know, sometimes the faculty decides they don't want to be on the committee anymore. You know, maybe they're getting ready for promotion and they have to work on that, or they have a big grant writing semester coming up, or they're just not into that topic anymore. So you know, a committee member can quit, but it should be a mutual decision, if possible. And you can indicate that with the dissertation committee form, which has 3 people. So Renee, is the dissertation committee form also going to be in that cool format?
Yes, that's right. Mhm.
Okay. 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 Did you guys get the PowerPoint? Oh, there, it's uploading. Okay. Do you see it, Steve?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, and if you guys forget to download it, I can just send it to you. What other questions do y'all have? When you guys are always saying like you have so many questions about quals and you don't understand it and nobody's telling you. This is the time to ask those questions.
This was really helpful, Dr. Unger. Can we do these at any time of the year as long
Yes.
as, okay, perfect. So it could be January, as long as, you know,
Yeah.
we work backwards like you suggested. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Perfect.
any time of the year is fine. Just make sure your committee's around, like don't do it on Christmas or something.
Perfect.
But yeah, so the most important thing is to find a time when your committee members can come to the orals and then count back from there. But yeah, some people, you know, if they're really busy during the semester, they might want to do the writtens like right after the end of a semester. You know, like if they're TAing a lot, they might want to wait until after finals and schedule it so that the orals are after that, or during spring break or something. That's totally fine.
Thank you.
Mhm.
But Jen, no, so when in terms of timeline, I guess, you know, the obvious thing is what is the average duration of people in the program? When do they need to petition for extra time? Is there a ceiling of, you know, they've got to graduate by X number of years, or you know, or they're if they're not graduating, things like that? I think students often.
Yeah, good question, Steve. So I think our average time to degree is like 5.5 years right now. That's the latest I saw. It's supposed to be a 5-year program. So if you come in, you know, with a bachelor's or a master's that wasn't like very overlapping with your required classes, it should be about 3 years of coursework, 1 year of, you know, getting ready for quals, and then 1 year of dissertation, but that can vary. The limit for how long you can take to get the PhD before they start kicking you out is 8 years. Renee, do you know when they start nagging people? Is it like 6 or 7?
Yes, so about 6 or 7 is when you should start receiving those taps on the shoulder saying that you're approaching the 8 years. And then depending on if your committee and Dr. Unger and the program is okay with you continuing on it past the 8 years, then we can do a petition for that. If you do exceed 10 years, which that's very rare, but that would have to go to graduate school approval. So I just, it's not like you will be, you hit 8 years and you are automatically kicked out of the program. But, like it was said, we do want to, push for you to meet that 8 years. And if you do have a master's degree from USC, then I believe that changes to 6 years. So if you have a USC master's degree, but then there's the trade-off because a lot of those courses we apply to your degree anyway. So it's just, they're trying to account for you already taking courses that may be applied to your program. So, and I'm still learning a lot of the rules. So, if you have questions, just let me know. But of course, if you're starting to approach that, I'm hoping to be proactive to where, you're not just going to be surprised. But yes, know all of those things.
Yeah, that's a good answer, Renee. Thank you. Yeah, so there's always ways to petition to get exceptions to rules unless it gets like really out of control.
Yeah.
But we just don't want people hanging out in grad school forever because you want to, you need to get on with your life and get a job, stop being a student. And also it looks bad for us if students are taking too long to graduate. So, we try to keep the time to degree as short as possible. And it's usually, I think for like every time I've seen it in the past few years, it's been like 5.5 years average. But, there are people who did it in 3.5. There are people who did it in 8. It's a wide range.
And I was just going to mention too, because this is something that comes up with a question for me is with the quals, the processing of your outcome is on me. So like it was said in the presentation, you'll notify me and then I'll submit to the graduate school and then give it about 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, because it still has to go through signatures, dean signatures, and then the graduate school has to process. And so if you don't see it reflected on your STARS report within around 3 to 4 weeks, then let me know. But then once it's all processed, I'll get the notice and then update your STARS report. So then that's when you'll see that your date of candidacy is recorded on your STARS report. And then for the dissertation though, that processing is really just all on the student. So, like the graduate school website was shared, that's all administratively done by you. And so with that, my role is mostly just helping you get your dissertation committee form signed. And then after that, it's all through the student. So I'm not able to go into your thesis center profile or anything like that. If you do have any technical issues, let me know because we can get in touch with the thesis center coordinator. But just know that by that point, I'm happy to assist in any way that I can, but I won't be doing the actual submission for you. So.
Right, that's all on you. You have to format it. You have to submit it. Yeah, and they're pretty extensive formatting guidelines. So get ready for that. So give yourself. That's a good idea to give yourself some extra time. While you're writing the dissertation or after you defend. To officially format it and upload it. Other questions? So let's see, do we have anyone on who has done their quals? I don't think so.
Do students have any questions about the anxiety of the situation or what to expect when, I just, well, for information, right, that we're supposed to be, as faculty, we're supposed to be a little challenging. Because, when students are applying for jobs, you're always going to get someone who's difficult and when you're giving your talk. And so kind of it's just kind of to get all of us, like thinking and also kind of see how well you can kind of, address challenges become while you're trying to address them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so the oral can be a little stressful. The written questions should be challenging. And hopefully, you should have time to answer them, but they're not super easy. They'll be challenging, but they should be doable. And yeah, in the orals, it's your committee's job to ask you challenging questions, and it's your job to be able to answer them in a thoughtful way. You don't have to have all the answers, but you should be able to think about things in a researcher type way, think about different possibilities and implications. As someone who went through the quals a long time ago, I felt like the most stressful time was when I came into the room, then they told me to leave the room, and then they talked about me for like half an hour, and I was like, what are they talking about in there? It's really stressful. But sometimes they're talking about how great you are. Sometimes they're talking about how you're really great in one area, but you need to improve in another area. Sometimes the conversation goes totally off topic, and the chair should bring it back and keep the process moving. But in general, it's supposed to be constructive. The whole point of this is to finalize a really good dissertation plan for you. So, that it's not about making you look stupid or, hurting your feelings or anything. It's just about, being challenging enough that you can really, get your dissertation plan really finalized, and, help practice some of the challenges that you're going to get, like when you're defending your dissertation, when you're applying for jobs, all that stuff. So I think it's usually pretty collaborative. It's not like mean.
And I'm just curious, really, with that, if a student is, they're working with their committee, and say if they just don't seem ready to take the quals yet, is that something that would kind of be discussed before they even go through this stressful process of the quals? Like, so I feel like it's not a situation the student's going to go in where they're just going to completely bomb. The committee knows they're just not prepared.
Yeah, and just put something really similar in the chat, that it's the committee's responsibility to stop the student if they're not ready. So, if the student turns in a dissertation proposal and, the committee feels like it's totally not ready, they should just say, stop, this is a first draft, but it's not ready. Keep working on it. Here's what you need to fix.
There's been maybe one or two times in the last million years that I've been there where someone actually, we couldn't technically pass them, but it's not like we failed them. We just had them. And this wasn't in our department. It was actually in another school. But we had the person. We just said it's not quite ready, and we informally said this is just a pre-meeting. So we redefined it as a pre-meeting, and they went back.
Yeah.
They could revise it. So the goal is to really be constructive. And I don't know, has there ever been an occasion where anyone's actually, failed?
I remember one time when the written answers were really bad, and it turned out that the person was like working at the same time and taking care of kids and had some other family issues, and they just didn't really focus on the questions for the full 5 days, and the answers really showed that. So we just said, okay, that was a practice. Let's come back in a few months and do this for real. That's the only time. And there have been times where, like, the written answers were okay, but not brilliant, and the oral was okay, but not brilliant, or we had some serious concerns about how they were planning to do something. Maybe someone plans to test mediators and moderators, but they're not explaining it right, or they're working with longitudinal data, but they don't really know how to do it. In that case, we can do like a conditional pass. We can say, okay, you passed, but we want you to write up the right way to do this. Yeah, we can do things like that. And that's happened a few times where we're like, okay, you technically passed, but Steve says maybe we're not supposed to tell you this. No, we can. Yeah, no, you have one chance to qual, and if you flunk, you're out. No, that's not true. Even if you totally flunk, you can take it again once. But I've never seen anyone totally flunk. And if someone is about to totally flunk, someone should stop them from qualifying.
Yeah, I feel like even before your stuff gets over to your full committee, like your chair, as a chair, I'm like, I'm not gonna let read, you're not going to send your stuff out until you and I are like, have spent a lot of time talking about stuff, and you're really, you know, and I feel like, okay, this you've done, you know, you're doing a great job. Like you really know what you're doing, and we'll send it out to the committee, and then you'll do your calls. Like, I'm not going to put you through that until I'm 100% confident that you're going to do great.
Right, right. And so then it's a really good idea to stay in communication with your chair. You know, don't just show up with a proposal and want to do your calls like the next day. You should be sending drafts. You should be talking with your chair and sending drafts back and forth, so that the draft that you send in your dossier is pretty good already. So that the more you communicate with your chair and your committee, the smoother it'll go.
Yeah.
You know, give them a chance to comment first, so you can work out the issues before they like surprise you with the issues during your calls. Yeah, but it's, you know, it's supposed to be like a rite of passage, but it's not like a horrible hazing experience. It's supposed to be, you know, it's supposed to be constructive, and I think it generally is, as long as you ask for help along the way and, you know, stay in communication with everyone.
Yeah, I feel like most students come out of the quals kind of being like, yeah, I mean, it was good. I worked really hard at this. And also, you know, it made me think more deeply about some parts of my dissertation that I hadn't thought deeply enough about. Right. And that's also supposed to be like a very, very positive experience.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You get a chance to, you know, spend a week thinking about things that maybe you hadn't heard of before, or really delving into how you're going to do stuff. And that's the committee's job, is to kind of challenge you on the things where you might be a little weak. So if you're a little weak on the stats, we're gonna keep nagging you until you come up with a plan where you know exactly every step that you're going to do, because we don't want to just send you into a dissertation not knowing how you're going to do it. So, you know, if you're vague on anything, we're going to tell you to expand on it, but that's ultimately good for you, because then you have a plan written out. And yeah, just the feeling of passing, you know, the feeling that you have 5 people who just told you that you're ready to write a dissertation, that's very affirming. You know, I felt good after that. It's like, oh, they think I could do this. Okay, cool. So yeah, it's nice to go through it and to be done, and to have the affirmation of your committee. Any other questions?
If you guys have questions, definitely reach out, right, to your chair and to Jen and to any of us. I'm happy to talk with any of you guys too.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the other thing that's good to continue, and Steve too.
Yeah.
The other thing that's good too is to make sure that you guys chat with the other people that are in the cohorts above you as they go. One of the really, really wonderful things about this program, the HBR program, is that I think you guys do a really good job. Like, the students generally done a really good job of that over the years, more so than some of the other programs, in just like communicating and being really supportive of one another. And they can also help you with like sharing, you know, formatting for quals documents, and you know, and kind of telling you more about what their qual experience is like. So definitely, you know, keep talking to one another. And then as you guys pass through, right, like reach down to the class below you, and help them along too. Cause I think that's such a wonderful part of this program, is all the peer support.
Yeah, definitely. And you, students can share stuff with you. You know, they can show you their dossier if they feel comfortable. They can show you the questions they got. You know, nothing's really a secret. You just ask, and I hope you're willing to share that with them. You know, I remember finding it very helpful just to see someone else's dossier. You know, what does it look like? And then, you know, and if they're willing to share the questions, that's fine. Yeah, so yeah, that is a really good thing about this program, is students really support each other, and that's wonderful, because sometimes it's easier to ask questions to someone who's like at your level if you're nervous about asking faculty, but you can totally ask us. We're not like scary, so please feel free to ask us, and ask Renee. Renee knows all the procedural stuff.
Right, and often we have like previous dossiers that people often want to see one for template. So we usually have those, and
Yeah,
so you can check with your chair or with other students, and there's some that go around and return them.
yeah. Yeah, when they were notebooks, I used to have a whole bunch of them in my office, but then I got rid of them after like 10 years. But yeah, people can send you the PDF.
Yeah.
It's totally fine. Okay, we probably have time for one more question. No more questions? Okay, well, thank you everyone so much for coming. If you do think of other questions, please email me or Renee or Steve or Jess or Matt or Tyler or whoever else is here. Okay. Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Have a good weekend.
You too. Bye.